Hello, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. We have all of our school board directors in attendance, and we have Madison and Sanjana is coming, perhaps. Okay, and we have Chu up on the dais, and he's actually going to be leading us in the pledge. So if you could please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And tonight, we are very excited to kick things off by giving the oath of office to our new school board director for Director District 5. So we would like to now invite Matthew Carrion up to the front so that Superintendent Hansen can give him the oath.
I, Matthew Carrion, do hereby solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Washington, and will faithfully discharge the duties of School Board Director of Tahoma School District number 409 of King County, State of Washington, to the best of my ability.
That takes us to agenda item 2.01, which is action to approve our regular meeting agenda. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 2.01, action to approve the regular meeting agenda?
I move to approve the regular meeting agenda. Second, same.
Director Miller motion and Director Wiggins seconded. Thank you. Do we have discussion? Since there's no discussion, I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
The approval of agenda item 2.01, action to approve the regular meeting agenda, passes 5-0. Agenda item 3.01 is the public comment portion of our evening. So I'm going to read a little bit for you just to kind of set things up. Each person will be given 3 minutes per topic to comment, and a maximum of 20 minutes per any one topic will be allowed. Speakers whose comments are less than 3 minutes in length may not defer their remaining time to others. If there are multiple speakers on one topic, speakers may be limited to points of view not yet expressed. Any person wishing his or her comment retained as part of the permanent record may submit a prepared statement to the board secretary prior to the oral presentation. The president may interrupt or terminate an individual's statement when it is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Comments and concerns relative to district personnel will not be heard in public, but rather they should be directed through the complaints concerning school personnel or programs, which is policy 4220. Formal presentations must be scheduled with the superintendent in writing no later than Tuesday noon, 1 week preceding the regular meeting. And per board procedure, we will not answer or respond to any questions posed by a speaker tonight, but we will make sure that you do get a follow-up after the meeting. So we have 3 public comments tonight. First, we have Warren Iverson.
So they ask if no one signs up for public comment, then you don't have to read that.
Yes, you're right. That's why I enjoy reading it so much that Warren, I'm going to count you. Yeah.
I'm timing you this time. I forgot the last time. I'm ready for it.
So, 5 meetings I've been to this last several months, I've been representing myself only. Okay, that's going to become important in the second part here. And it happened to be here on this sort of thing. Recently, I attended the interrogation of the candidates. I would say 45 minutes or a little bit less, but with all 4 of them, it was a 3.5-hour ordeal, and I'm sure for the board too. And then I attended the next day the 2-minute confirmation, which was almost as quick as you're swearing in here tonight, and adjournment. Anyhow, congratulations, Matt, to being the newest member. And I commented last time also that we're so fortunate. We have 4 members of the public step forward and offer to become members. A lot of this we do not get that kind of turnout. You asked many questions of prospective members. However, I was surprised by the lack of several national issue questions regarding school boards were not asked. Some of these questions that I'm going to run off, you did ask questions of, but not others. You know, one of the hot topics if you're running for election is parents that attend school board meetings and are disagreeable. Are they concerned parents or or terrorists. That's something you're going to have to address, not now, not in particular. What is CRT? Nobody wants to admit to teaching it now, but it's in the schools nationally, not necessarily here, or some offshoot of it. What is the view of that? Again, I know the answer to this, and everyone else here. Do you respect or support this country? Your tour's duty to testify to that, and the rest of the board too. That's not a question. What areas or problems do you see or want to address if you're selected? And have you attended any Tahoma school board meetings? And how long have you lived in this area? Do you support the teaching of sex education in schools, and at what age is appropriate? Do you believe the only success is if you are a college graduate with education, or you consider a non-college trade a success? Again, what is your view? Military duty or service, is that considered a success? That's on several of these. Now, I read today when I was writing this, it's a little saying, tell me and I forget. I think we're all guilty of that. Teach me and I remember, hopefully. Involve me and I learn. Hands-on experience, that's the best teacher of all. Involve the students, and you learn and retain. That concludes my remarks for myself. And then if I'm allowed, I would like to start. I don't know if a lot of you have ever heard of the Greater Maple Valley Unincorporated Area Council. I'm a member of that, founding member actually from 1975, so I've been here a few years. What is our vision statement? It's facilitating strong local ties and communication between the public, organizations, government, supporting quality education, ensuring proper representation for rural interests and needs. There are other issues also here. What do? We met with representatives of King County government, including Dow Constantine, Reagan Dunn, Kent Poland before that, Dave Irons before that. Just a lot of county councilmen have been there. All John Taylor and all of his crew at the local services. They come out either in public before or now at Zoom meetings. All of his heads of that and the heads of transportation and different departments, they all come out and we interact with them frequently. Sean Kelly, the mayor of Maple Valley, has also come and attended our meetings. Michael Hansen has attended our meeting, I think in September or October at the start of school. Before him, Bob Morrow and Mary Hansen, that goes back at least 25 years or so. We've met, like I said, with Tahoma School District, the fire department. We also operate the train show, model train show at Ravensdale. I think it says here, I'm going to give you 22 years, but I think it's 24 or 25. This has not been updated. Anyhow, districts matter, boundaries matter, and rural representation matters to us. That's all on this form I'm going to turn in. Last night, for the first time in 2 years, we had an in-person public meeting and a Zoom meeting. And we met in this building with this poor acoustics, fire department, police department, all sorts of buildings, Hobart Church. Last night I learned for the first time that Valerie has been your designated representative to the Greater Maple Valley Area Council. I always thought she was just a concerned citizen who showed up. Didn't know that until last night. Anyhow, so I've been authorized by our council to remind or inform, including myself, we need a new representative. She's no longer on that board. Wish you would consider that. We meet once a month on the first Monday of the month, generally, unless there's a holiday at 7 p.m. And last night at Hobart Church, I think we're going to stay there for the next couple, try to decide if it's a combination of Zoom and other two. So we also have several other transportation committees, environmental committees that meet separately by Zoom. You may want to participate in those too at your choice. So anyhow, I just wanted to inform or remind. Like I said, I was shocked that the board had appointed Valerie at least 4 years before that. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you, Warren.
Next, we have Valerie Paganelli.
So I'll just, Valerie Paganelli, citizen, 25005 Southeast 216th Street, Maple Valley, Washington. Just a point of correction, Warren, I am a concerned citizen as well as a school board representative. And by doing so, will continue my service on the Environment Committee and the Public Relations Committee of the Council. I'm here tonight, Matt, especially to welcome you and to thank you for stepping forward to serve. And I really appreciate the nuance of your last name, at least by pronunciation. Carry on. That may not be how you pronounce it, but I appreciate it as a theme for District 5 school board directors. Carrying on to be the listening board member, whether you formulated your own views or not, to some of the topics that even Mr. Iverson presented. I know that you will serve with an open mind to the community, not just District 5, but that is a hallmark for the District 5 representative to be open-minded as well as listen to voices as well as engage the community. The other piece that's somewhat of a tradition in my work and my predecessor's work for District 5 is the fiscal mindset that you also have, and I anticipate you will bring. And that's an important piece of the governance of the seat that you sit in, and representing the constituencies. They have become very accustomed to the individual in that seat asking hard questions, representing them, bringing their voices forward, even if it's not your own. And so I look forward to experiencing that with you. And I'm here tonight to celebrate you, not to bring any other mood in front of the room, my colleagues, Madam President, and the school board director with whom I serve, but to show my support and to make sure that you know I'm available however you may choose to call on me. And I'm also here because there's some celebrations on the agenda that I feel kind of a part of from my service on the board, as well as a couple of items that I would be prepared to ask some hard questions about if I were still in the seat that you are in particular items 5.05 and 5.06. And then I'm really eager to hear the plans coming out of 5.04 with AJ and the communication public relations plan, and hoping that that embodies some of the work that we collectively have done and for which I was very passionate while I was on the board. And so that's really all. I'm not going to use my full 3 minutes. Thank you for your time, and I'm really excited for you and excited for hopefully the liaison role that you have to the student board rep that I work with. I think you brought on, she's a delight, as are all of the student board reps. So thank you.
That brings us to agenda item 4.01, administrative report. Superintendent Hansen, do you have a report for us tonight?
Yeah, you bet. I want to take a minute to, first of all, welcome Matt, and excited to have you joining the team up here, and share with the group that Matt's got a running start on things, and has had at least 3 school visits, getting to know some principals, getting to understand some site plans that are in action right now, as well as talking to the principals about changes in those plans as we move forward. And looking forward to, we've got scheduled visits to several other schools this week and the week after spring break. And Matt's a natural. Our visits to Lake Wilderness and Tahoma Elementary, Matt knows quite a few people already, and that was pretty evident. But what was also evident is the enthusiasm that Matt was greeted with by those people. So I was appreciative and definitely took note of that. So welcome aboard, Matt.
Thank you, Superintendent Hansen. Agenda item 4.02 is our student board representative report, and Sheila, I'll let you take it over.
If it's possible for me to follow.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Hello. Okay. So yesterday there was a very important change to lunch announced over the intercom. We're changing from paper to plastic trays at lunch at Tahoma High School. Very important. But in other more important things,
sophomores, juniors, and freshmen have finished registering for classes, I believe, at the high school. Some freshmen are probably still holding out on being late, so if your parents of a freshman or any other underclassmen, please make sure that they register for classes. But that means that it is now time for the incoming freshmen to begin to prepare for moving into the high school next year, which is why there was a freshman incoming orientation tonight, where my brother's attending St. John and Madison were both there tonight, so that freshmen can begin to be acquainted with the school building. Other events held at the school in the past week was the culture fair last week, organized by the Student Voice Committee. It's been in the works since there was a discussion of site plans at Rock Creek Elementary across the way a few months ago, and last week we finally got to see it all together. There were booths there, as well as a human library put together. And I'd like to reiterate that a lot of this was organized by students, and it was students running it for the most part, from what I understand. Also last week was I believe is one of the first talent shows that Tahoma High School has put on, also held there and also organized by students. We also have the school play coming up. I know several people in the rehearsals for that, or staying very late after school to make sure that they remember lines and the like. During the school day, we also had a Mario Kart tournament last week, because even though we don't have a lot of basketball teams duking it out like in March Madness, we do have a lot of high schoolers willing to duke it out in Mario Kart tournaments. Apparently. Robotics as well, when I believe at a competition last week. I think that St. John can speak more to that than me, since I think they were there.
Yeah, we won our body weight competition, and this week, tomorrow morning we're leaving for Cheney, and that's district competition with 50 of the PNW teams.
Good luck to robotics tomorrow. And then spring break is next week. So that's nice to look forward to. That'll be thank you.
It's a good way to go out. We will now move on to agenda item 4.03, which are our board director reports, and we're going to start on this end with Director Pendergraft. My report is pretty brief tonight. I just wanted to first say welcome, Matt. I'm super happy to have you here and looking forward to working with you. And this week, I was end of last week, able to visit a legislative session recap with Director Miller and Superintendent Hansen, and Mark Mullet, Lisa Callan, and Bill Ramos, and also our city leaders, and Mr. Mayor was there as well. And it was great to all get into a room and be able to discuss how things kind of wrapped up at the session and find out how different bills were going to be impacting us. So it was just all really great information, and that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Director Pendergraft. Director Wiggins.
Are you going to do that? Thanks. So not a lot to report. I just wanted to thank Dawn and Tracy, Kimberly, Renee, Lindsay, who are not here, but for the amazing experience last weekend down at San Diego for the Carnegie Foundation. The improvement in education conference was quite an experience. Not everything I would say that goes on there would be applicable to our district, but there was a ton of learning. And one of the things that I just wanted to share with all of you here and anybody who's watching online is that our district is doing a great many things well. We are in some ways ahead of that conversation. We're kind of leading out on that conversation. What improvement, I won't say improvement science, that makes it not quite as understandable, but the improvement effort looks like in education. And so a couple of my thinkings coming out of that conference relates to our site plans, and these are conversations that I will bring up with my fellow board members and with Superintendent Hansen and Director Wakely, and how we can make those site plans even more valuable in terms of tools that we can use to diffuse learning and the improvements that we're making across our district as an organization.
organization, and maybe get them a little bit out of some of the silos that they exist in. And again, that goes back to the amazing things that we're doing, and how do we share that learning, how do we share those successes in other places within the district. And then I also wanted to say how much, as an organization, as a district, we're in the business of learning and teaching, but as an organization, what are the things that we can do to be a learning organization in and of itself? And that's really what improvement science is. It's how do you put enough cycles and repetitions in where you're never stagnant. You're learning how to learn, in fact, essentially, which is a pretty interesting thing. And so, amazing conference. Thank you for Dawn's leadership down there. She did a great job pointing me in the places that I would be most able to plug in and understand. And so I look forward to building on some of the work that we brought back from there. Also, a couple weeks ago, sat in on the technology committee and just looking at there's plans forthcoming for that. Taking some of our learnings from the last 2 years and what technology meant to keeping our district and our staff and our students above water. Technology was obviously a huge component of that. So part of that process is just going through and finding the shiny things that worked really well, and not abandoning those, and seeing how we can leverage those for student success going forward. And then thinking about those things that maybe were more challenging, and how we can pivot and adjust off those things. Again, all in the spirit of improvement and learning from our experiences. And then lastly, congrats to Matt. Welcome on the board. It's good to have you. Thank you for your service to our country. I really appreciate that. As a son of a veteran myself, I always appreciate people who are willing to do that. Congrats to the robotics team. And then I think we have We the People coming up in a few weeks, so I'll be heading out with them at the end of April. I've been assured that from Gretchen that the team looks really, really good. Maybe a little challenge is going to be on Zoom, right? So we got to figure out what Zoom life looks like for We the People, but we'll be fine-tuning that over the next few weeks. So that's it.
Thank you, Director Wiggins. Director Carrion?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of words here. First, thank you to Mike for his warm welcome to the board. And also the district and the schools, all warm welcome. Really do appreciate it. And, you know, like Mike said, I visited Tahoma Elementary School, Lincoln Wilderness, and Glacier Park this past week. And one thing I saw throughout the schools was this culture of family, a family culture. You know, and if you have experience with successful organizations, successful companies, not good companies, successful ones, great companies, they first start with a culture of family. And it was great to see it. While each family was different, each family was wonderful to see, and that family culture is really what makes this home schools so great. So looking forward to see that more, and just thank you for the warm welcome.
Thank you, Director Carrion. Director Miller?
Thanks, and I'll join the welcome party. It's great to have you up here. Thank you for everything. A few things to report out on. I happen to be kind of witness to a bunch of joyous events happening in the district in the last couple of weeks, and wanted to celebrate that. One of the things about robotics that was really kind of cool this last weekend, at each competition, the team competes for what's called the Chairman's Award, which is not robots in a playing surface playing the game. It's students giving a presentation in front of the judges to share what they're doing with the community and what their sponsorship opportunities look like, and all these kind of different things about how they go about doing their business. And it's really just a very different part of the competition, but really a very special and wonderful opportunity for the team to practice those skills, which are different. And wonderful to report that Bare Metal won the Chairman's Award here this last weekend at Bonnie Lake. Which means that when they go to Cheney, they'll get to compete in that element of the competition. And I believe 2 teams go on from there to compete in Houston if they were, competed well and advanced in that particular opportunity too. So just a different element and another special reason why bare metal and robotics is such a great great program. So really excited about that. Also was in attendance like 4 times for the middle school production of Once Upon a Mattress, which was spectacular and really wonderful production. Cast and crew did a great job, and the directors as well. You wouldn't think it was a middle school production. It just did spectacular. Great songs, great sets, great acting. It was really fun. And then I'll piggyback on what you shared about the culture fair. Just absolutely blown away at what the team put together there. So thankful that the students stepped up and used that opportunity. We had some wonderful performances celebrating some culture. I visited many of the booths that celebrated culture. The Human Library was really exciting. I sat down with, and that's kind of an odd term for those that don't know. A Human Library they had a series of bios of different people that you could look at and read, and then you could check out a book and you could go talk to that person, and they'd be waiting for you kind of around the corner. And so I checked out 3 or 4 books while I was there, and got to hear from some very interesting experiences from people that are just in our community. And so the great combination of students and staff and families and our community coming together. The place was packed. It was just really well done. So my thanks and gratitude and congratulations to everybody involved there. And then the next night was at the band festival. We had the Tahoma Band Festival happening in high school as well. So it's just really wonderful to see students back engaging in these activities that bring them joy, that are special to them. And it was wonderful to be able to be there and celebrate. And then one last thing I'll mention, visited Mapleview Middle School a couple of times over the last week. One was for an assembly. It's the first assembly there in like 3 years or something. And it was really, really well done. They brought in a speaker, Esteban, whose last name is escaping me. Yeah, sorry, Mike. But he just talked about kindness and those kind of attributes. Just how to be kind, how to listen, how to take care of one another. Being back in person, even though we're 6-7 months into the school year, these are just kind of skills we need to relearn a little bit. There was some wonderful reminders from him, a really well done presentation, and it was really, I'm thankful I was there. And then later in the week, attended a staff meeting, and just a big shout out to Mr. Jordan Barnett, who put together a video he produced, and he interviewed several students, and they were really courageous and shared about their experience and kind of the intersection with equity and what that means to them, and areas where the school district is doing well and where we're not doing well and that we can work on, and how positive and negative experiences that they've had during their school life here in Tahoma. Just a really raw and, like I said, courageous production, and he did a great job. So there was a viewing of that video at a staff meeting there on Friday, and just thankful for him for doing that, and for the students for sharing their voice and their experience. So busy couple of weeks, but all good things.
Thank you, Director Miller. And I'll wrap things up by joining the band and welcoming Director Carrion. We're very excited to have you join our team. And one of the things that I know we've talked about in the last couple of weeks is that our seats are really designed to be focused on the what. So as board directors, we're supposed to set the strategic direction for the district, but then the how of how that all plays out really is tasked to our superintendent. And so we don't often give Mike as kudos and accolades because he's just awesome all the time, and we could give him kudos every single day that we're up here. But I wanted to take this time tonight to thank him for the beautiful job that he has done onboarding Director Carrion, and it's such a great example of who he is as a servant leader for our district. He brought Matt in right away, just days after he was selected, and had a 2-hour meeting with him going over what the role of a director really is, talking about things that we're working on as a district to continue to improve for our students. And then he, with his hands, he said, you have this many schools to go to, but I want to take the timeline that it would take to go to each of those schools, and I want to condense it down to this, because it's really important that you have face time with every single principal in our district, so that you have that back and forth communication. You know that the door is always open to reach out to them at any time. That is just one of a million different examples that I could give about the kind of servant leader that Mike is, and I am incredibly grateful to have him on our team as a school board director, but also just as a mom in this district. Our kids are in incredible hands. So thank you, Mike, for everything that you do. And with that, we're going to move on to agenda item 5.01. This is actually the presentation, discussion, and action item portion of our evening. So as we move into this section, I'd like to remind everyone that the board has agreed on using round robin to ensure that each member has equal opportunity to speak. We're going to keep our discussion length per agenda item to 20 minutes, which I'm going to monitor, and individual board members' discussion to 3 minutes per agenda item, which Mrs. Wheeler is going to monitor for us. Each director's time will begin with the first word they speak and will continue through the responses that are provided. So for agenda item 5.01, we are going to celebrate a THS student. We're so excited about this. Lucia Hammerstrom was chosen as the Puget Sound Skills Center Culinary Arts Student of the Quarter, which is remarkable. And we always love celebrating our students, but we wanted to take this opportunity to recognize her. So if you could come on up and tell us about your experience.
And President Hallwell, if I could provide a context for Lucia as well.
Please.
So for everybody in the room, Lucia knows this quite well, but skills centers in Washington State, there are 20 of them. And Puget Sound Skills Center is a cooperation between the Highline, Tukwila, Federal Way, and Tahoma school districts. They have 18 different programs, of which Lucia is a part of the Culinary Arts program. Wonderful opportunity for our kids to have access to some programs that we don't have in our own schools. And was super excited to see Lucia getting this recognition from them. And when I visited Puget Sound Skills Center earlier this year, the enthusiasm all around the building, but in particular in the culinary arts area, they love our Tahoma kids. So Lucia, you've represented our community very, very well there. So thank you for that. We've asked her to come and share a little bit about what it's been like at the Skills Center and your impressions there. So Lucia, take it away. Thank you.
Well, hi. As you all just heard, my name is Lucia. I'm currently a junior at Tahoma High School, and I'm one of the 2 students in the Culinary Arts program. I'm actually the vice president of the PM session, and I've currently participated in being a lead in 2 of our menus. I was a lead in both the restaurant management, so which is kind of how we all serve the customers and basically act as the hosts. And in the hotline rotation, which is our current menu, the Spanish menu. There are 4 rotations in our culinary, in the Culinary Arts program. There's the dining room, pantry, hotline, and pastry. And in each rotation, you learn a plethora of skills related to each one. So you either learn job-specific skills or more general skills that can help you throughout the field. At Puget Sound Skills Center, not only the Culinary Arts course, there is a large focus on working on your portfolio. So they work for a lot of your future-ready skills, and they help you develop your resume, cover letters, thank you letters, and actually help with your future career plan essay there, which really helps carry over to Tahoma for less work in the end. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I really suggest going there to any junior and senior because there is a lot of enthusiasm just because everyone wants to be there. They want to learn this skill straight that they're going into. It does a lot. It's helped me improve my grades at Tahoma and just my relationships with others because I've had like just a better mood and enthusiasm going into the day. I've made a lot of new friendships with kids from all the other districts, and it's a great opportunity. I just want to thank you all for funding the transportation and taking the time to give us that opportunity to be able to go out there and actually learn job-specific skills.
Do we have any questions or comments for Lucia?
I'm just curious, you mentioned those 4 disciplines. What's your favorite? Which one do you enjoy most, or where do you see yourself going?
Out of the 4 rotations, my favorite is actually pastry, which is a bit ironic because another reason that they've been so awesome and understanding there is I actually have a food impediment. I can't eat gluten of all things. It's ironic, but I love pastry and they've managed to work around it, and I've been able to eat almost every single menu item so far.
I think I got to try your gluten-free red velvet cake when I was there. It was really good. And your public speaking skills are very good too, I just want to tell you that. So what is your favorite part of your day at the Puget Sound Skills Center, would you say?
I think my favorite part of the day is when I first get there, I'm one of the first students there, so we all get changed and then we head into our daily meeting. And it's right after that when they release us for the day and so we can start getting prepared. That's my favorite part because everyone's sort of scurrying around and they have like a plan of what they need to do, what they need to gather. But everyone's moving sort of fluently and there's no like collisions and everyone just works to get stuff done.
That's great. Thank you. Your family must be so proud of you.
I actually probably have 1,000 practical questions about how I can actually cook better pancakes, but I'll save all that for maybe a different conversation. I don't know if you were here when one of our community members, Mr. Myers, was talking about those different pathways outside of just college-bound, and not that you are or you're not, but this represents one of those pathways, and I'm interested in what you would say to your fellow students who may not know or may not see these opportunities that aren't kind of these really deep, tried and true pathways like collegiate, academics and things like that. What would you say to them? How would you share your experience with them, and what would you say that would be the best thing for them to do to kind of open their gaze?
I would tell them not to single-mindedly focus on getting a degree, and because it can cause a lot of stress to people, and I've noticed that within siblings and friends and just other high schoolers. I would just tell them to explore their options because Puget Sound Skills Center offers both a 1-year and a 2-year program, so you don't have to dedicate your last 2 years of high school. It's very similar to Running Start in the sense that you can still have a high school life and sort of out of the school life. So it just allows you to explore what you're interested in. You're allowed to switch programs if you don't quite feel comfortable or that you're in a fit in the current program. I believe that those who are struggling to find a path is to really just reach out and ask people. And you don't even have to go to Puget Sound Skills Center if you do go to try out a program. Most districts are willing to offer a 1-day sort of trial run, or more than 1 day, if you're still sort of on the brink of deciding whether or not to join. I think it's just best for people to extend their options instead of forcing themselves into the social norm.
Right, I got one thing, actually.
Yes.
You're awesome. That was awesome. You're also speaking, great job. Thank you.
Before you go, we do have something that we wanted to give you in recognition of your outstanding accomplishment or your outstanding achievement.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And I don't know if Dad wants to take a picture. I'm assuming it's Dad, sorry.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will move on to agenda item 5.02. We're going to keep with our celebratory mood. And we are going to have Principal Fritz Gear and Tahoma Purchasing Agent Cindy Darcy join us. I don't see Cindy, so it might just be Fritz.
It's just Fritz.
Just Fritz. Okay, so Fritz Gear, we're so happy to see you.
Happy to see you as well. It's kind of hard to follow a student that is so quick in speech. But I was told to speak from my heart, so that's what I did. Hope I understand. Welcome, Matt. I think you'll be representing our school. I saw Valerie, and I think you're taking that position, so welcome. We'll be glad to have you joining us. So our school has a tagline that goes like this: there's no place like hope. Maybe you've heard that before. And it's really important to all of us at Cedar River Elementary School because hope has quite a meaning. It's a belief. It's a belief in that something beneficial is going to be happening. And in our case, it's for our students. We want them to leave our school with this belief in themselves, that they have a bright future, a very hopeful one. And nothing is so more fulfilling than when hope is realized. And that's happened for us on several occasions this year at Cedar River. There's been a lot of them, but it started about 3 years ago at Allie Hard, or not Allie Hard, that was one of my students, Allie Hayes. She and I were serving on this committee, and it was the housing committee. And at that time, they were talking about, so how do we fit all the kids that are joining our schools and have room for them? It was like that. And our school happened to be growing pretty fast at that time. And it was brought to my attention of this. Do you think your school would like to be relieved of some of their program and they can go be dispersed to other schools that would free up some space? Or do you think that you would just want to squish together and hold on for another year or so and we'll get you some portables? And I thought, and Allie and I looked at each other and, well, our staff is going to want to hold on and squish together. And because we have hope that things will change and they'll get better for us. And so 1 year went by and 2 years went by, and then there was COVID going on, and so a lot of things happened, and we got to have more hope. And we did have hope. But when hope is realized, you get this sense of gratitude that you didn't have before. And that's what happened to us when our modular finally came and opened up. And it's really interesting because we were very squished. We were using places like the library for classrooms. And one of our gyms was being used as a music room, plus 3 offices for our specialists who were going into classrooms because they didn't have their own room in their own space. And stages were being used for classrooms, and offices were being used as classrooms. And we had no conference room or staff room or things like that. But it was okay. And then we got a little cranky with each other once in a while, and we're not a cranky place, trust me. But, we were squishy. But then when it happened, just that sense of gratitude. And we're so very blessed. So we're saying thank you. And we wanted you to know kind of what we're dealing with, but really it doesn't matter because we hoped and we endured. And now we have this space. And it's just a really cool thing. So thank you for supporting us in that way. We're very appreciative. And we have a short video to show you what it's like there right now in the modular.
I like the new modular because of all the space that we have and because that we can go and work other places, but like be at different tables so that we don't have to be like on the ground. And I like having a desk because it was hard to store our stuff in boxes in the library. good to have your own space and be able to do what you want to do. It's good how like in the classrooms it has it has your own space. We have desks now, and there's sinks now, so we can go wash your hands with a science experiment and get things in or something. So yeah, I like just how there's more space and more stuff to do when you're inside modular.
So that's our new modular, and this Friday we're having our first spirit assembly as a school. And all of the classes that aren't in the modular are going to be walking through and getting to see the modular. They won't get to go in the class, we'll put the peek in and walk through the hallways there. But they're all bringing their own sticky notes just to leave a message for the students that are going to be living, or that are living in the modular this time. So again, we wanted to say thank you and hope we last.
Thank you, Fritz. Before we move on, because this was really made possible by the public who helped fund this, Lori, do you mind speaking just for a moment about that?
Absolutely. So when we brought this project to the board, there were a lot of unknowns with the modular project. We were kind of learning as we went. I want to thank Cindy Darcy, who really led this process from the very beginning and ensured that the staff didn't have to stay cranky and were able to move in February 25th. It was from the build to actually moving in, it was 140 days, which is pretty spectacular. So the cool thing about a modular is while the building's being built on an off-site, all of the infrastructure can be being worked on and put in place. And then it just kind of all comes together. It really did all come together. At this point, as Fritz said, we're all moved in. There's some closeout items that are going out and retainage that needs to be released once all of the boxes have been checked. Some hydro seating, some landscaping that needs to be done on the outside, and some few cameras that are still on back order. But for the most part, everything's finished. The board originally approved a $3.9 million project, if you recall, all in. And I'm happy to report that we're below that number. I'm still waiting for some final bills on furniture and fixtures, but at least $300,000 below that number. So a good process and a great project that, as far as quality, is pretty impressive with what we're able to do in a short period of time.
And do you mind sharing which fund that comes out of?
Absolutely. So this was coming out of our capital projects fund. So this isn't a general fund project, it's a capital project fund project. It was one of the projects that was, as Fritz said, and part of that housing committee projects that we were talking about before COVID hit, and there was a long-term plan and a short-term plan, and then a medium-term plan on how do we ensure space for all of our kiddos, and that's where this modular actually came about, is in that process. So it's coming out of that fund.
Thank you. Do you all have any other questions or comments? Okay. Oh, sorry, Dr. Hank.
I just wanted to say how beautiful that building is. Modulars have come so far. I mean, I was floored. It is really a beautiful, wonderful environment. So thank you.
Thank you both so much for taking the time tonight to join us. And Fritz, please know that we understand you have a very busy and long day ahead of you, so you do not need to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we appreciate you staying tonight, or joining us tonight. We will move on to agenda item 5.03, which is the phonics implementation update. And we're going to have Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Don Wheatley, and Elementary Literacy Specialist, Shelley Heiler, who join us. They're going to present and answer questions from the board.
Actually, it's really Shelley, but
Oh.
I'll be
You can be the Robin to her Batman.
I'm here for some things. She's the star.
Thank you. The last time I came in front of the board was approximately 4 years ago, and we were bringing in front of, I know Malia and Pete and maybe Mike were in the room at least, not yet on the board, but we were talking about the need that we have. So I'm very thrilled to be here today. My name is Shelley Heiler, like Malia shared, I am our K-5 literacy coordinator. And I have been in Tahoma since I was 22 years old. And I'm receiving my 30-year trophy this spring. So I come forward with just so much pride in being an employee, and also just sharing with you the great work that's happening around this implementation with our teachers. So to get started, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the units of study in phonics. It's also known as UOS in phonics, so you'll see that throughout the presentation. So in following Fritz's lead with There's No Place Like Hope, well, the yellow brick road kind of captured the essence of this slide, and that it was this wonderful implementation process where we saw down the road this wonderful implementation around phonics. We began with the need for a more equitable experience for our students. Teachers came to us and shared with us that the current resource had felt cumbersome, difficult to maneuver, not teacher-friendly. And that helped to guide the process around what we wanted for our students in the classroom. But we really felt that we needed a systemic approach to teaching phonics instruction, and that we needed equitable experiences for our students. And in working through that, we brought the voice of each of our elementary schools, all 6 of them. We had a first grade, second grade, and kindergarten representative, big reading specialist. We had Jerry Gaston as our principal rep, and boy, was there excitement. So we moved forward with the adoption, and at that point, the materials arrived. Did I turn this off somehow? Sorry.
Okay, AJ, you might be on.
AJ?
And moving forward, just
Next
go
slide,
ahead.
yeah.
So I'll just keep going. Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. So the materials arrived. They weren't released until August of 2019. The materials arrived. Teachers start unpacking. There's great excitement. We have professional development to support teachers in the implementation, and they get all set to go. And unfortunately, we're 1 unit in when March rolled around and we had to shut things down. So, of course, as we all know, that took us into 2020, 21, which was last year, and we had to pivot to online school. Well, the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project did a beautiful job of supporting teachers and pivoting themselves and providing videos that our teachers would be able to post on their CSAS sites and still support the learning of phonics. Okay, so we're very grateful for that. However, the implementation of the phonics curriculum was not yet underway. So we moved in to this year. Learning along the way, we knew that this year would be a new normal with challenges that faced us. Challenges like when you're trying to teach phonics and you have a mask on, not being able to see a child's face and see how they're forming letters or sounds, and the spacing requirements that came. Illness, children coming in and out. The use of manipulatives, and a big part of our curriculum is tied to rug time and actually hands-on activities. There were parameters that they had to, of course, adhere to. So we had this new normal with this going on, and as well, at the same time as our phonics implementation was happening, the videos are a thing of the past now. Now we're in the curriculum, doing our best with this new normal. And at the same time, we have what rolled out as our DIBBLS screener and progress monitoring. So there really was a lot in this new normal to learn. Okay? What we found, or what we are finding, is that teachers have done a remarkable job thus far in learning with the conditions that have been present this year. They've been extremely optimistic, hardworking, reflective, thoughtful. How can I adapt this lesson to meet the parameters and still have it meaningful for kids. So we thought what would be best is to really get some student voice, teacher voice, principal voice, and think about our next steps and about how in many places teachers haven't had, new teachers especially, the same level of training that other teachers have had, and they'll need that support. We've talked about teachers that had initial training but wanting a little bit more training to feel more confident. And then our experienced teachers, and there are several that I want to share with you. Okay. The other piece is that we know that with implementation, there's a high level of demand. And so thinking in this relaunch, how we provide a high level of support for our teachers. And it'll need to be differentiated by building based on their needs. But our plan is to work collaboratively with our principals and our reading specialists and our building coaches to establish based on their site plans what their needs are and then provide that support. We have several supports that are in conversation right now, and one of those is a professional development support called Letters Training that we're talking about. We're also talking about a phonemic awareness support to complement our phonics curriculum called Parity, and also continuing our work with how we support teachers in the DIBEL screening, the early literacy screener. So we've got some multiple faceted supports that are needed. So then we move into the actual curriculum and some of those highlights, which is the part that when each of these students are talking, just how your faces light up. That's how I feel about getting into classrooms and seeing the work and the craft that teachers have in our unfolding. So with the units of study curriculum, students are seen as word detectives. Okay? That's a theme that runs through K1 and 2. And I wanted to share this graphic mainly because the skills of learning to read are extremely complicated, hard work, and integrated. So for kindergartners, first graders, and second graders, it starts way at the beginning with alliteration and rhyming. And students are beginning to understand that words have sounds. And they start thinking about letters and the corresponding sounds. And then they're thinking about and learning about concepts about print. And then they're blending CPC words. And then pretty soon it continues. So it's a quite sophisticated work. Now, our phonics curriculum also is aligned with our Common Core State Standards and the foundational skills. So I linked that in for you as well. But I also pulled out a couple that I want to share with you and that you'll see modeled by some of the students and that I'll talk about as well. So here, just thinking about the knowledge of one-to-one letter correspondence and by producing the primary sound or many most frequent sounds for each consonant. So the students are just learning that each letter has a sound and then they're blending those sounds together. And you'll also see a through line with the work that kids do with short vowels and long vowels. So to highlight our first teacher, this is a kindergarten teacher, so we have 5- and 6-year-olds doing this work. And the way that Mrs. Spangler is so intentional in her craft, and the way that she connects her phonics to her reading, to her writing is phenomenal. So the first day, I've been in there probably 4 days. The first day I walk in and she starts with this fantastic song, The Vowel Shield. And she says, Shelley, please don't put this on tape. And so basically on the far right, there are 5 vowels in our shield, and they can help us read A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U. Will you read this word? And then she holds up the word, and the kids are all singing. It's fast-paced, lots of fun, and it's a 3-letter word, consonant, vowel, consonant. So they're having to attach the consonant to sound, know their short vowel, and then they're blending it. And that's just her warm-up and a way of keeping a nice tight spiral with her curriculum. So then she moves into the lesson, And there were 2 lessons, and one in particular had to do with tiles, letter tiles. And these are 5-year-olds again. And she hands them out, and they cut apart the tiles. There are about 5 or 6, and they're all consonants, and then the 5 vowels. And then she goes into her lesson, boys and girls, I want to teach you that you can change the vowel and create new words, and she sets them off to do that work. Okay? The next day, or a couple days later, I go there, she's again keeping the spiral nice and tight, reviewing, CBC words, sounds, blending, all that. And then she goes, well, boys and girls, today we're going to do some really sophisticated work. And in that left image, you'll notice they were doing a guided writing activity and talking about syllables. And talking about how each syllable has a sound and has a vowel. And then she showed them how to take each syllable and break it apart so that they could then write that syllable. And she had them stopping, she had them clapping, she had them touching their chin, all sorts of fun. So I wanted, AJ, if you could click that kindergarten tab just to see a little example of this sweet, sweet child.
Hi, Savannah.
Hi. What are you working on today?
I'm working on vowels. Every word has a vowel. And we're making it out of these words. And we're trying to change like this into a different vowel in the middle.
Oh, I see. So at first you tried the vowel E, and then you changed it to O. What happened when you added the O? Ba. And then is that a real word or a make-believe word?
Make-believe.
Okay. So then you would put it onto your chart where you think what category it belongs in. Thank you. So again, thinking about, it has so many opportunities in terms of just building skill around consonants, vowels, just refreshing all that, and then also then revisiting and talking about vocabulary. So that was Mrs. Spangler's classroom. Then we moved, am I up here? Oh, there we go, into 1st grade. Again, I linked into foundational skills. The one that I really want to highlight for you is the representing. We're in 1st grade. It's actually the inflectional ending, which is the last one, but all of the others are also present. So in Mrs. Roberts' classroom, she's at Shadow Lake, previously a reading specialist for many years. Her classroom is just from floor to ceiling, every space you can imagine, covered in language, words, books, poems. And on the far left is a word wall that kids access. Now, the 2 little sweet peas in the center are holding messages, and that's their dictation. So the skill that they were working on was OU and OW. Shouting is not okay, and I have powers, and it's all tied to vowel work. And then on the far right, what was fantastic about the work that Mrs. Roberts was doing was that she had her words loud, held up, and then she was helping kids to read all the way through the word. She would cover that vowel combination in the center so they'd get that beginning blend, and then they'd look all the way through to the end, and then she'd uncover it, which they knew that the vowel is the hard part, the middle part of the word. Kids a lot of times just skip over that. And she worked through that with her students, and then she sent them off to the far right to work in partners. And in that, they started with just reading through their words, and then they added in different inflectional endings to make new words. Agent. Again, this is just showing.
Sounders, counting, vowel patterns, ground, shouting.
Wow, more.
And found.
Wow, super job. And then we moved to 2nd grade again, looking at this. Now we're spending more time on long vowel combinations. And in this classroom, we have both Mrs. Kuhn and Mrs. Kuhn. And they're working more collaboratively throughout their lesson and really looking for different ways to make long vowel combinations. And the little girl that I've highlighted here, she's looking for long A combinations. And what I love is how she finds a combination that's just not typical. And so it's a little hard. She has a little bit of speech that might make it difficult for you to understand, but I think you'll get the gist of it.
Here we go. So, categories we have A. Something E, and for lazy, it doesn't just A. Vacation still doesn't. And lemonade goes there. Neighbor will go there, and then people will go there.
I like the way you organize your chart. A different way, but I like it. You found a lot of really challenging words, multi-syllable words. Were there any that were a surprise?
Where is it? This one really surprised me.
Why did neighbor surprise you?
Because it doesn't have an A in it, and it still makes the A sound, and
Yeah, I thought that one was pretty tricky too. Excellent, thank you, Scarlett.
So we have, to steal a phrase from Michael Wiggins, we have many, many great things happening in our classrooms, a lot that we're doing well. And while it hasn't been the perfect implementation, it's not what any one of us thought it would be, we are still traveling down that yellow brick road, and we still do have, there's no place like home or hope, that we will continue to move forward and serve our students while getting those equitable experiences that they deserve, and building those authentic readers and writers, the transfer of that skill, those skills.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments? Yes. Thank you for that. It was a great presentation. If you had to pick one way that this curriculum is different from what we were doing before, what would you say it is?
Well, first of all, it's being implemented. In terms of how the actual curriculums themselves are different, this curriculum is much more, I would say, language-based, so it not only deals with the decoding piece of what reading is, but also builds the language comprehension piece. It has a spiral. It's not as much an isolation as it is embedded with shared reading, song, what else? I think just mostly it builds community around your readers and the authentic purpose of we're doing this work to become better readers and writers. The application piece is there too in terms of writing.
Thank you. Yes, Director Miller.
Yeah, thank you for the videos. It was so special to see those, and I looked at the slides before, and I'm going to have to get better at finding hyperlinks like that, because I didn't find those, but those were really fantastic. Just an observation and then a question. One, it just seems like such an engaging curriculum to see the kids doing these activities and such a lively classroom and lots going on. I don't, in my head, picture reading and writing as being that lively, and so it just seems like it's inspiring for young learners and readers. The question I have is, COVID aside, and that little speed bump in the middle, the implementation, now that we're kind of really hitting stride with it, how did that compare to what we thought it was going to be? Again, COVID aside, but when 3 or 4 years ago when we were putting this plan together, coming up with an implementation, how did that play out, and what did we learn from that maybe we can apply to the next round?
How did the implementation play out? It has played out not quite like we thought. I think that that teachers came forward and shared that the resource was clunky, that, like I shared earlier, that it wasn't friendly. This one is more friendly. It's definitely easy to use. But at the same time, I think there's some underlying other things that are in the problem, that it's more than just the resource. I think that teachers have had the autonomy to create, and so letting go of their, like, how I want to teach phonics and I want to do it this way, and thinking of now I have to implement with this curriculum. So we have to think through how the purpose behind why we have a core curriculum in our Tier 1 class, in classrooms, and how that supports student learning, equity for student learning.
Thank you.
So I was excited that this was on our agenda because this is my love. As a kindergarten teacher, I just love teaching kids to read. So I know the science of reading has come far since I graduated from my teacher prep program almost 20 years ago, and we know so much more about how students' brains actually learn how to read. How are we keeping up with the science of reading research and making sure that all of our teachers are empowered to actually implement it in their classrooms?
Great question. So how we are keeping up is this year there was a small group of us, 3 or 4 of us, that began the letters training, which is based in the science of reading. It's a 2-year commitment, several hours a week, and trying to think about how we take the best of this world and combine it with the language world and position our teachers so that no matter what student is sitting in front of them, they have the ability to meet the needs of that child. And by delving into this, we've been having conversations, and we're about to have some different conversations with principals here in the next day about how we can offer this type of training to our teachers on a large scale, starting possibly with K2 and then moving interest to K5. We haven't gotten that far, but we know the importance of it, and we know that we've got to have both, like that simple view of reading graphics show that you've got to have that strong decoding piece, and you've got to have that language comprehension piece. And I think that too goes to what I'm talking about might be really the root of what the possible problem could be about implementation. So.
Well, I feel like you teed me up for my last question because you mentioned the simple view of reading. So that decoding piece in that formula includes, as you know, phonics and also phonological awareness and orthographic mapping. How are, you mentioned Haggerty as one supplemental curriculum that some teachers are using. Are there plans to roll that out district-wide? I'm just thinking from an equity standpoint. Equity is so important to us, making sure that every student has equal opportunity to learn what they need to learn. So are there plans in place to implement Haggerty or another curriculum?
Yes, we've got a quote, but we still have to meet with principals and talk that through with them. I'll call it our tentative plan, our proposal, is that we would offer that to our K2 teachers, and then for our 3 through 5 teachers, there's a curriculum, a supplemental curriculum, a parallel curriculum. It's called Bridge the Gap. That would be more used in a Tier 2 sense. So in those 3, 4, and 5 classrooms, they would be able to access that in a small group or where they saw a need for those skills. So that's what we're thinking in terms of Haggerty, yes.
Thank you, that's my time. I could talk about this forever, I love it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, we really appreciate it. So we will move on to agenda item 5.04, which I'm also excited about. AJ, I didn't mean to make it sound like I wasn't excited for this too. So Public Relations Department Plan. Our Director of Public Relations, AJ Garcia, is going to be joining us to present and answer questions from the board.
We'll see if the clicker works for AJ from afar, otherwise Lori better help. I'm here.
Yes, exactly. It sounds like a challenge.
Next slide.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Excited to give you all an update on where our department plan is for public relations and our alignment with Tahoma Cares. I started in July, and it was an interesting time. I came in first week, Mike was gone, Tracy, who led the hiring team, was gone, Mark was gone, and I'm kind of sitting around, what do I do? What's this all about? And then in August, I went to my first ELT retreat, and Mike and some other district leaders spoke about Tahoma Cares and what our district goals are. And I think having been here for a couple weeks, I was like, where do I line up with this? Where's my touch point? How can I see that through line from me as one person, sit in an office, write one off a bunch of emails, thinking about, well, how can I contribute to a student reaching high expectations or help us achieve our equity goal, or think about wellness. And over the last 7-8 months, whatever it's been, I feel like I've been able to see that and have it come through in this work as we develop a plan for our department. So it's been really exciting. And so first, just an acknowledgement that I think the work that you're doing and that we're doing to try and help our staff see that through line and see their entry point is definitely working. At least that's what I'm noticing in our office. So as a little bit of a background, I'll also add, I said I came in July, and our department's seen a pretty important turnover here in the last year. There was a communications director, Kevin Patterson, who did a wonderful job for 25 years and had so much knowledge and history about this district. And there were a lot of systems in place that he used. And our communications specialist, Wendy, is no longer with us either. So it's me and James Stanley now who are leading the charge in that department with the support of Dawn Foster as well. So for the three of us who are really doing this type of work in a school system at Tahoma for the first time, having Tahoma Cares as sort of a guideline for us and to know, okay, how should we direct our thinking and thinking about what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And so it's been, I think, a really fortunate time for our department to have these goals really starting to come to life at the same time that we're starting to rethink what our department's really going to be about and where do we want to get to in the next few years. I have to talk about the audit because I just get so excited about it. I know you all do too. And so we came in Tahoma Cares. We're starting to ramp up what that really looks like within our district. And for us, we get handed kind of this piece of gold, really, that's here's what a nationally recognized organization who specializes in the work that we're doing is saying, hey, this is what we recognize about your tools, about your platforms, about your communication strategies, and here's this really neat package summary of recommendations on how you can take it to the next level. So having that piece and saying, here are some really specific action steps that you can take, and then we're able to take that coupled with Tahoma Cares and say, okay, here's what they say we should do. How can we really make it fit what we're trying to do as Tahoma? How can we make sure that it fits with the goals that you've set for our district? And so having those two tools together has been extremely helpful for us. After taking in that research about what we're doing and starting to analyze, okay, here's how our platforms have been used historically. Here are some of the analytics behind the success behind those platforms, reading the audit cover to cover many, many times, studying Tahoma Cares. The next step for us was to really figure out from that 30,000-foot view, what is it that we want this department to be? There hasn't been that established mission, vision, values for what public relations really means to this district. And so it was James, Dawn, myself, a couple other thinking partners, thinking through what is it that we really want for this department. And so our action steps that you're going to see me talk about are largely driven by that audit, but they're also driven by what we want as a department as well. So kind of the big picture version of what we've written here is really centered around strengthening our partnerships and inspiring that support for students, both from our internal and external stakeholders. We do have a community of parents and stakeholders who want to engage and they want to be hands-on and know what's going on in the district. And what we gathered from the audit is that there are a number of people who don't always know where to go for the information, who to talk to, how to get engaged. And we feel that it's our responsibility to not expect them to come to us for that. We have to go to them and provide them that information and the tools and equip them to be really engaged. And I think that's really the primary responsibility of what our department is, because our community is not going to feel as strongly about supporting our students if they can't really see all of the great things they're doing at work, if we're not providing them that information. So that's really driven what we feel like our responsibility and our beliefs and values are centered around, is making sure that all of our stakeholders, both externally and internally, feel well equipped with the information and the tools to be fully informed and fully engaged with what we're doing. I'm going to bounce back and forth a little bit between these two. I know they're not super easy to read, but I'll kind of hit on each of them, some of our main connections to each of the goals. As I mentioned a little bit ago, when I first started, it was like, where does our department really line up with a lot of these things? And the first time that I looked at this and thought about that, it was challenging. And now here, as we've done this work and we've been really thoughtful about what our department's purpose is, it's been a lot easier to see those connections. And so it's been cool to see these couple slides come to life. When we talk about equity, a couple specific things for our department, reaching families in the language that they want to be communicated to in has always been a challenge, I think, for a lot of school districts. Our communications partner, which is School Messenger, they do our website. They have the platform that we use to email all of our families. We just spoke with them this week. It sounds like we're going to be able to expand the languages that we communicate to families in. Currently, when we send emails, unless we specifically go to a translator that contracts with us and get it to them, give them the time to read through it, give their translation, get it back to us. Usually, it's too long of a timeline, and oftentimes when there are emergency communications or a snow day or things like that, we don't have time to be able to do that. And so having a tool that's available to us that's going to allow us to more easily reach those families immediately in the language that they want to communicate in, is a super helpful tool for us. Another tool that we're starting to utilize is going to help us improve our ADA compliance for our website. So adding an accessibility tool that will allow people to enlarge text, take away color, if they're prone to seizures, if there are motion graphics, can we take those away, things like that. And so also making it just the information more accessible to everyone, but there's also a legal component to that as well that's beneficial to make sure that we're in compliance with everything that we need to be doing now. Those are some nitty-gritty things. The exciting part and the creativity about equity for our department is thinking about making sure that we're providing voice and sharing our platform with all students and all teachers and all stakeholders, and making everyone feel like they can really contribute to the Tahoma story. We know everyone has a Tahoma story and they want to tell it, and so we can help give them that platform. I think historically our district's done a good job of not just leaning into the programs that are historically really successful and only giving voice to those kids, but being super intentional about when we go out and do our looking for stories. Okay, who are some of the groups or some of the students or some departments within our district that maybe don't always get the same recognition as some other groups, and making sure that we're giving them that equitable space within our platform to be able to tell their stories too. Within high expectations, I think for our department, the best thing we can do, again, is kind of providing that platform, but celebrating student success. I think students and anyone is motivated when people are excited to tell their story, when we can walk into robotics and we can talk to students and, hey, show us what you're doing in here today. Tell us about your competition season. It gets people excited to be able to tell their story, and then when we're able to celebrate them and showcase them on our platforms, and people see that, I think it really inspires other students to say, hey, how can I get my story told? And we've started to see the Student Voice Committee with the Culture Fair make sure to start tagging us in everything because they want to get their voice shared. And so having students and people who want to come to us and say, hey, here's a great story that you should consider telling, it makes our jobs easier when a lot of that heavy lifting of finding the stories is done, but it also feels great when people are actively seeking out ways to get their stories told on our platform. Also within high expectations, things like CTE, things like our transitions program. There are, I know one of the values for the district is that every student can be successful, and so how are we showing different types of success? not for every student. It's not going to be going and getting a 4-year degree at a prestigious university. There are lots of different paths to success, and are we making sure that we're highlighting all of those different paths as well? Within wellness, there's kind of 2 components to this. The first is just being able to signal boost a lot of the resources and the events that are going on. Liz Thiebert, our wellness coordinator, does a fantastic job making sure she's keeping us in the loop. She's got a lot of different events, resources, people that can be connected with, connecting students with our counselors. She does a really nice job keeping our department in the loop on how to communicate those things. And so she makes that part easy for us. I think the other piece is how we're considering the person on the other end of a lot of our communications too, from a wellness lens. One example I'll give is the COVID communications. Everyone who's a parent in the district got a lot of emails from us at the start of the year. There's a COVID case here and here and here and here. And we really did have thoughtful conversations as we got into the beginning of 2022 of, are there ways that we can make this information visible without having to bombard people's inboxes every day? We know that just the information overload that people get, not just in schools but everywhere, it does have an impact on mental health. So what can we do to maybe try and minimize some of that communication and limit what we're putting in people's inboxes? Can we take 5 different emails and compress them into a weekly bulletin to try and ease that a little bit as well? So that's kind of one of the interesting pieces of wellness where I feel like we can have a real connection with our community as well. And then what we're doing for our department right now is not only figuring out our alignment with these goals, but developing a true communications plan. What are the actual strategies and the tactics that we're going to use to reach our stakeholders over the coming years? And what you're going to see when that plan is finalized really is heavily focused on those last 2 goals there as we think about what our year 1 strategies are around climate and culture, and that's really centered quite a bit around our internal communications, and then partnerships, which is kind of the obvious one for what our department is, but being really thoughtful about what do we mean by creating partnerships and going back to what I said about meeting our audiences where they're at and making sure that they can get that information too. So with climate and culture, like I said, it's a lot about our internal communications practices. Are we showing our staff the Tahoma Cares goals at work? Are we driving that shared purpose so that all 1,200 staff members can see that entry point and they can get a true understanding of their relationship to these goals and how to make them come to life in their learning spaces? So doing creative storytelling that's really thoughtful about the staff as our audience. Here's a great example of a teacher at the middle school who's implemented this new curriculum, and they're helping students focus on belonging, but while also trying to meet those high expectations and presenting that in a way so that staff can view it and maybe give them that light bulb moment of, oh, this is a way that I can see my path to helping students get to that place as well, and doing some creative storytelling there. Another piece of that, I think, is just the flow of information. We have shared decision-making processes with our labor groups and with our staff, and I think we do a really strong job of that, but how can we improve making sure that the same message that you're getting and that Superintendent Hansen is getting is the same message that a bus driver is getting, is the same message that a 3rd grade teacher at Rock Creek is getting, and having that consistent flow of information, but then also kind of flipping the hourglass and thinking, okay, we provide that information, but now how can there be that 2-way dialogue where staff can give us their input at the district level, can make sure that their thoughts, their input, their feedback is making its way back to you all as well. So thinking about what are the avenues that we can create that's going to give staff that opportunity to provide their input and have that dialogue as well is important. I think it fits within climate and culture, but there's a strong argument to be made that it fits within partnerships as well. and it's thinking about our digital platforms and how we can make them just more accessible, but maybe modernized a little bit too. Looking at our district website, anyone who's been on there knows it's tough to navigate. It's tough to find the information you're looking for. There's things on there that just need to be updated. And while we do want to make that visible for our external audience, it's really important for our staff too to know, okay, I have questions, where can I go on the website and find these things as well? And we have super high expectations for our students and for our staff, and I think that the platforms that we use should reflect that too. We use state-of-the-art tools in the classroom and provide those state-of-the-art opportunities for our students, and so when we're putting out our communications, it should be on really great platforms too. Right now, our website, I think, is lagging behind there. Trying to get more consistency in our content development as well, which I think we've done. We've made some really good strides in this year, but are we putting together a really strong communications plan that focuses on how are we driving engagement on social media, how are we driving more website traffic, taking advantage of the analytics that are out there to influence the types of communication that we're using, which I don't think has really been done for our department historically, is taking advantage of a lot of those analytical 2022 tools that are available to us to make sure that what we're putting out is not just what we want to see and not just what we think our audience wants to see, but what are they telling us what they want to see as well. And then partnerships, kind of the obvious one for our department, and what's the touch point that we can have when we look at these Home Care's goals. I have so many good notes, and now I keep mixing them up. The biggest thing for partnership, and I hit it once before, is really equipping our community. And what you'll see in our plan really for year one is trying to expand the reach and our engagement, not just with our families, but with our other external stakeholders as well. And so reaching our broader community with the celebrations that are going on in our district, getting Tahoma Cares and the work that's being done in schools around those goals visible to our stakeholders, thinking of maybe new creative ways to reach them. We've typically had a quarterly newsletter. What's maybe a different way that we can reach our audiences that is in the digital space, or even just rethinking the visual behind the ways that we're reaching them with mailed things like that. Communicating to stakeholders about how their investment is benefiting students, I think, is extremely important. Like I said, there's a lot of people that want to be engaged, they want to support, they don't know the first step to do that, and so if we're meeting them and saying, hey, you've made an investment in our schools, in our students, this is the result of that, these are how things are paying off. I think there are probably a number of people in our community who don't realize things like robotics or our athletics or nurses, special services, some of these things that you never think of are really benefiting from their investment, and making sure that they can really see that progress being made is extremely important to kind of rally that support around our students and inspire people to get out and see what our kids are doing, come see the play, come to the Friday night football game, and feel good about the investment that they're making in our students. I think the last thing I'll say with that is, I know the question is what is the board going to be able to do to support those things, and I think one of the pieces there is, as we seek that engagement with our community, I know we're definitely going to come to you to make sure that we can get you in front of our community leaders, get some of those face-to-face interactions with our stakeholders. I think you all do a really, really fine job of that now, but I know that you all like to be as engaged as you can, and so can you find opportunities for you to get to community events, get in front of some district leaders, get you in classrooms with students more frequently, and I want our department to be able to support with that too, because you're all incredible advocates for our district, and I know that you'll be able to help rally the troops around supporting our students and making sure that all of our kids really feel like they belong and are cared for by the adults here. That's what I got.
And directors, that we're at the 20-minute mark. Can I just have a thumbs up if you'd like to continue?
I went
We have to
20
extend.
minutes.
Yes.
Sorry, you. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. So thank you so much, AJ. Do you all have any questions or comments?
I have a couple. Adrian, thank you for this. You and I have had a couple of conversations as the board rep for your department. I'm really excited about this. I think hopefully I've conveyed that in our conversations how critical I think this work is to our district. And I've said this before. I'll say it again. One of my frustrations as a board member has been that I don't, and maybe I don't see it well enough. I see all the amazing things that we're doing. And you'll come in now and you'll see on the inside all the great things that our district is doing that as a parent, I don't see them on the outside. And so for me, it's one thing to be doing the work. It's another thing for the community to know that we're doing that work. And so thank you for the effort. That's the question is there a role for students in this effort? And I say that because I think, and maybe this is like a 10,000 foot level impression, is that a lot of the comms and the PR and the communications that go back and forth, both internal and external, are adult to adult, parent to parent, guardian to guardian. And one of the things as I think about our goals is getting our students directly engaged in that work of sharing the goals and sharing the good things that we're doing. So is there any thought in giving to that? Like, how can we make them ambassadors for this effort when their voices usually speak the loudest, way louder than ours?
Yeah, there is. And I think currently with the storytelling that we're doing, it's really thoughtful, even if it's something where here's this staff member that is doing this great job. Like, Matt Bashir's came and spoke about the new ELA curriculum. So it's, Matt's kind of a great spokesperson for that. When you think about the continued storytelling of that work, it's super important to get student voice in there to not only celebrate what they're doing, but I think, as you said, as a community member, to hear directly from a student, hey, this is how this is benefiting me, this is how we're using this tool in the classroom, is just as powerful, if not more powerful, than a staff member sharing that story. And seeing the audit and some of the recommendations that are in there. One of them that's not in there that we certainly plan to be included as one of our drivers in our communication plan is expanding that student voice. Judy Belleville, who's going to be the newest principal at Tahoma High School, already being really thoughtful about that. Can she set aside time in Power Hour maybe for students to gather together and give some input and give some feedback? It's obviously easiest at the high school level to create that, but it can be done at every level too. So definitely giving thought to it. What the exact strategies and details are to get there yet, I'm not sure, but I can say that right now we're being really thoughtful about all of our storytelling and thinking about how are we, first of all, telling the stories that have students at the center, and if there are more 30,000 foot type of things, where are there opportunities to inject some student voice into those pieces? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Mitchell?
Director Wiggins stole part of my question or comment. Thank you. I think the flip side to that is how do we support students when they're the ones communicating to students? Because I know that personally students pay a lot more attention to probably the social media accounts that student organizations run rather than the district newsletter. And you mentioned it partially with the Student Voice Committee using the Tahoma Cares hashtag. How do we support student organizations in doing this? I'm just thinking of things like sophomore class Instagram trying to promote homecoming.
Yeah, one of the sort of mini campaigns that you're going to see within our plan is how are we driving that digital engagement, and I think targeting students as part of that is important. So every student account, are you engaging with the district? Are you using the hashtags that are just going to make it more visible for us? And then what we can do is we can do a better job in our time that we spend on social media, making sure that we're seeking out those accounts and consistently looking at the types of things that are being shared, and signal boosting things there as well. I think there are probably also opportunities if students or certain groups don't utilize those platforms a ton, how can we invite them to use the district platform to have their story being told too? A lot of groups might have an Instagram page, they might have a website, they might have a Facebook page. What we can do is we can work with those groups to try and drive more and more traffic to those pages so they're seen by more students. Thank you. Yeah.
I just have a comment. I just wanted to tell you that I just think you're great. And I also wanted to thank the staff for hiring you, because I think that there were a lot of people that probably applied for this. In your position, you have these goals in front of you, and the audit and the report, but there's a big human element, and what you bring to the delivery of all of this is the charisma, the energy, innovative thinking, and I just really appreciate how you're doing this. And as a parent, when I'm getting the emails and I'm getting the communication, I see a big difference. And I just appreciate the direction that we're going, and I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I feel pretty supported in my role, so thank you.
Oh yes, Superintendent.
AJ, at the beginning, you said you were going to flip-flop between this and your dashboard, and then you didn't go to your dashboard. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So a lot of what's here is reflected in our connection pieces too, but these are some more of the specific action items that are from where the draft version of our plan is right now. So I don't know if you want me to go down the line on some of these things here, but I know that you've all had a chance to see this, but if there are any specific key actions within some of these connections that you want me to speak more on, I'm happy to, but I tried to touch on most of these things and then just forgot to flip back and forth.
Oh yeah, can I ask one quick question? I was just overcome with your praises that I forgot to ask you. You mentioned that tool that's going to be a way for us to have the languages translated.
Yeah.
Is that something that how can you talk about like timeline? Are we using that tool? When will we see that?
Yeah, pretty quick.
Okay.
The platform that we use is the same platform that we're already on. And when we got on that plan, I think the Spanish translation was really their only option, and now they've expanded those, and they've got 100 different languages. I think we use 40. There are 42 or 43 languages in our district that families have selected as their preferred mode of communication, and right now we're not hitting 41 of those, and so this is going to allow us to get, I don't know about all, but most of those, at least the ones that are pretty frequently used, and we'll be able to move to that really quickly here, like in the next couple weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you, AJ. We are so appreciative of you for joining us, and also, as Haley said, for all of the work that you've put into this. You've really taken our Tahoma family to a whole new level. It's true. So we just love you so much, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
We are going to move on to agenda item 5.05, which is action to approve the resolution 2022-02 surplus technology. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 5.05, action to approve resolution 2022-02 surplus technology?
I move to approve resolution 2022-02 surplus technology. Second the same.
Director Miller motioned and Director Wiggins seconded. Thank you both. Director of Finance and Operations, Lori Cloud, is here to answer any questions we might have. This is, those of you who are watching, this is a very standard protocol that we're about to go through, so there may not be a lot of questions, but do you all have any questions after reviewing the material? Okay, I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item 5.05, action to approve resolution 2022-02 surplus technology, passes 5-0. Thank you. Agenda item 5.06, which is our first reading revised policy and procedure 2021 library information and technology programs, is the next item on our agenda, and we have Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Don Wakely, here to answer questions.
I think, AJ, do you bring the policy and the procedure with us?
You bet.
Thanks. So on the policy, you
you can see the language changes for the most part. It looks like a lot of changes, but in essence, it really isn't necessarily anything hugely substantive on the policy. And actually, I think there's more embedded in some of the changes that are made in the procedure. And so I'd love to be able to actually update you on those and then of course take questions or comments connected to either part. AJ, do you want to flip over to the procedure? Thank you. So a couple of things that you'll really notice here. There, of course, library materials have been a piece that's been in the news a little bit lately, and you've probably noticed that. And one of the recommendations that WASDA is making is connected to trying to suggest that districts be more precise in their language. If you actually look at the language that we've had, we have always had an intent connected to if there were people who wanted to challenge, do book challenges. For us, it's always been kind of underlying the intent in our policy that be district citizens, people that live within our community, not somebody from far across the United States, potentially tried to tell us what we needed to do in our particular school system. But with the recent politicizing and kind of public nature of what's been happening recently in the country, WASDA's making a suggestion to school districts and given sample policy language or procedure language in this case to be more precise in language, so it's just really clear that of course we're always happy to answer questions for anybody, but really connected to what should be governing what we put in our schools should really be influenced by the members of our community. And so you'll notice a little bit of language change, just trying to be very precise in that language. AJ, if you go down just a little bit, we can pick up one of those where suggestions connected to district. Keep going, a little bit more. There's a spot. Oops, that's perfect, AJ. So notice the residents or staff members of the district. So just really trying to be very precise in the language, so it really has to be a resident of our community. So that's a piece. The other part that we have added to the procedure, and here, AJ, if you'll move up. Thank you. Keep going to B. A little bit. There we go. You kind of get it in substance here. Or excuse me, D. What we've added to our procedure is in instances where our principals or the library staff are really looking for support connected to acquisition of books that might be considered to be somewhat controversial or sensitive in some way, that they have an opportunity and we have a more formalized process connected to actually taking advantage of teaching and learning support to help to kind of navigate that. You'll recall that we added some books in our elementary library collection at Lake Wilderness, and that was a really good example with the Rainbow Library where Melanie reached out and said, hey, our PTA, this is a wonderful opportunity, what a great donation, very in line with our equity policy and movement as a school system. But gosh, should we have, the equity team? How does this work done if we want to have a little bit of support in reviewing the texts that they were suggesting? And so that gave us an opportunity. Emily and I partnered together in thinking through bringing a few of the practices that she had used in Issaquah, along with some of our new thinking connected to our instructional materials committee, along with our equity group, and really detailed out exactly how that works. And so took this opportunity to get it in writing, just so that it's really clear for all of our citizens and for ourselves. It's a weighty responsibility connected to the roles that we play in teaching and learning, because across all of our system, like none of us want to be censoring books, and we also want to be really thoughtful about the choices for literature selections that we have within our classrooms, but also in our libraries, which is really what this policy and procedure speaks to. So I feel really good about what we've put together here, and we've gotten to use it quite a few times in the last little bit, with both the review of the Rainbow Library of books for Lake Wilderness, and in that one, there were at least three of the books there that the group said, you know what, we actually don't think that this is for us right now the right thing to put in our elementary. Might go in a middle school library, might go at a different level, and in all of those cases, you know, Melanie as the principal said, yep, I agree, and accepted those recommendations. So I think the procedure is working just as we have designed it, and so this just gives voice to it.
Do you have any questions or comments?
I would thank you, Don. I think one of the paramount considerations for a board is that we're the board of this district. And although as a lawyer, I'm a big fan of checks and balances. I think that it's a standing issue for me, in the sense that, hey, if you don't have a dog in the race, you really don't have a reason to be saying things. And so I take issue with these with individuals who are basically suitcase in hand going district to district around the state and calling these out, and that's I think that's kind of representative of adults' political aspirations kind of weighed out on a district level. And so at the same time, I'm grateful for the effort on the front end, so that we're being thoughtful about one way or the other about what we put in front of our students in terms of the curriculum, not just the curriculum, but also what's in the library. When I came on board, it wasn't to make a decision, it was to make sure we were making right decisions and we were making thoughtful decisions. And so the policy and the procedure that supports that, I'm a fan of. So thank you for tackling that issue at both ends. I think that's smart.
Thank you. Good thinkers that contributed to that, so I'm great team.
Yeah, thank you.
This is really minor. I made a note here. In the section D, just a bit down, it says 70% most and then a comma. Was that supposed to be vote? Because the wording was a bit confusing there.
Yeah, when we use a consensus decision-making model, we actually use this idea of a most.
Oh.
So that's a term that's particular to our school system in that decision-making model. So
Okay.
that was intentional.
Okay. If it's intentional, then good. It just seems confusing from the outsider perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I had questions, just maybe about the procedures itself, just from a clarification. On the acquisition support, it seemed like there was a team set up, committee itself to evaluate whether or not you want to enroll that material. It seems like for the deselection process, you didn't have that process in place for the deselection material, but it was just the basis of the librarian itself. Can you help me understand that in the procedures?
So
Section H.
in the deselection, thanks AJ, you go to that a little further down. There's selection, keep going. Let's see, let's stop. Okay, consideration for deselection. And actually, most often that piece connected to deselection, another word that's often used by a librarian is reading of the library. So it's not that they are looking through the books to try to think about is something appropriate or not appropriate. The idea for deselection is just simply reading of the library collection so that you don't have old books there, you don't have those sorts of things. So that's why the language there isn't really nothing controversial. When you get down to the reconsideration, that's actually the place where we talk about that something that usually a community member or somebody is raising up something that says, hey, I wonder if this is actually content that shouldn't be in the library. So the assumption on H is that you only have materials in the library that the principal or the library staff meant to put in. In the one case earlier this year where we did have a book that got raised up from a public comment, that we then said, let's review. In that particular case, the principal said, hey, let's run this through the process, and that's actually where that one was at. So certainly if there was any piece of library material that was on a recommended list, and for some, to be transparent, when we order books for the librarian perhaps orders, I mean, they come from recommended lists that you saw earlier in the procedure, and the librarian doesn't necessarily read every single one of those books cover to cover before they actually go into the collection. We trust our vetted sources. But if something did surface to say, who is that, they go through, could ask to go through the process that we put into D. I'm thinking about the D selection, maybe we should put
Yeah, I mean, I just think, there's,
it's a little,
especially with item 5, there's a lot of ambiguity in that on a personality basis, so I actually was cautious on that.
Yeah, I'll think about that language and maybe have a change there. Thank you.
So in terms of next steps, this is our first reading, and so then we will have either a second reading or based on our school board director's preference, we would then put it on the consent agenda. So just so you know, that's the next step. So thank you so much, Dawn. We appreciate you coming tonight. And that takes us to agenda item 6.01, which is action to approve our consent agenda. May I please have a motion to approve agenda item 6.01, action to approve our consent agenda?
I move to approve our consent agenda. Second, same.
Director Miller motion and Director Wiggins seconded. Thank you. I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 6.01, action to approve our consent agenda, passes 5-0. For agenda item 7.01, board inquiry tracking system, which we also call BITS. Superintendent Hanson, do we have any additions or changes?
No additions or changes, but just a reminder for everybody that BITS is kind of like a parking lot where topics may come up at the meeting. They're placed here for discussion later at a work study, and we'll be discussing the BITS at our May we have a work study.
Thank you, Superintendent Hanson. Agenda item 8.01 is adjournment. So this meeting is adjourning at 8:27 p.m. Thank you, everybody, and good night.